Hello friends. In the cloud computing course, we are looking at the third part, cloud lifecycle development and testing, all these deployment scenarios and how it has been evolved or analyzed. In this part, we'll see cloud service development and testing part. Here we'll see NetBeans, Eclipse like IDE integrated development environment for development. Next, we'll see how JMeter and SoapUI like testing tool and testing framework works for testing of cloud services. So this is the basic framework of NetBeans web service development environment where we have a user-friendly environment where we select from file you select new project and from new project you start for generating new kind of web service and you develop your own web service for exposing it to the public and that would be helpful and for others your client. And in NetBeans you can also develop your client code so that the client can use the data that is for your web service code. So these are the basic standards which are being supported by NetBeans. So what are the standards? It's based upon the Java Enterprise Edition, like Jakarta XML web services, like JAX WS was being supported by NetBeans IDE, and it also supports Jakarta RESTful web services, JAX RS, and it also supports NetBeans IDE also supports Jakarta XML binding JAX-B web service standard. So these are the three basic standards given by the NetBeans as well as Java Enterprise Edition. So these three were very helpful and advanced form of web service development. Now we'll see how NetBeans SOAP-based web service was being developed. It's very simple. You have a development for new project, and in the new project you have to select a web service project. And when you select a web service project, it's you have to select a SOAP-based web service project. In the SOAP-based web service project, you have to create and develop web service with some Java classes and WSDL that you want to write. So how you have to create? You have to create simple web service and create a method which is like an operation. These type of method was being exposed to the internet and could be helpful for used for the web service client. So these methods are being exposed to the internet. How this method could be recognized by the compiler or interpreter or anything. So it could be recognized with the help of some annotation. So this is what Java class contains. If it contains Java X JWS dot web service, then Java compiler will start recognizing that this is not a normal method. This is an operation which needs to be published in the open internet with some link or port. How this been done? So this has been done automatically by the compiler and NetBeans and Java X libraries so that you can have web service operation working. For example, in this figure, calculator web service was being developed where it has add operations which is having two parameter which is of integer type. So you can develop a operation like addition, means integer I is sum with integer j will be processed inside the web service operation, this operation, and it will be returned to the client. Suppose if you pass parameter I as 1, j as 2. So in the processing by the operation of web service, the operation will return 3 and 3 will go to the client and client will start re responding that you have got result 3 for the parameter that you inserted 1 and 2. Client will enter 1 and 2 for addition purpose and web service on the server will process 1 plus 2 and return it to the client and client will show 3. So the most important part is annotation of this operation add. If you annotate this operation add as at the rate javax dot jws dot web service, then automatically the NetBeans will create a WSDL file. That WSDL file could be interpreted by the client, web service client. Now, how you can convert soap based web service to RESTful? It's very means it is one of the way to convert soap based web service to the RESTful waves web service resources, and it's been part of NetBeans project and NetBeans web service project. And you can customize the asynchronous web service client and how you want to create your web service client. We'll see in next few slides. So NetBeans RESTful web service. It is another type of web service. So you need to select what kind of web service you want to develop. So this was like RESTful web service from database. So you combine database along with RESTful web service, and so that it will have a persistent means stored data set. And how you will use it, you can use this RESTful web service with JAX RS, and currently it is in the version 2.0, and Java persistence API. So this persistent API is used for using this RESTful web service development, and this have client entity classes, patterns, and even directly connected to the database. So there are three patterns, three ways to develop RESTful web service. First, with entity class. So you developed entity Java being like a class and have some web service. Then based upon some patterns that there are some standard patterns on Java that you can use for the web service development as well. And next, you directly connect with the database. This is also possible with this RESTful web service. So what kind of RESTful service do? So RESTful service basically combine the entity beans and provide some CRUD operation. What is CRUD operation? It's read, create, read, update, and delete. So this kind of operation are being provided by a RESTful web service with the entity beans. Then you can develop a web service client with the NetBeans. How you can develop a NetBeans web service client? You can just simply, for the invoking of RESTful and SOAP based thing, NetBeans generate some of the automated code which can invoke your web service. Either it was in SOAP web service or in the RESTful web service. So uh, the code which that you are going to write will be exposed and being generated automatically by NetBeans web service client part. How this been done? Basically, NetBeans read the code and of web service, and by reading the code of the web service, it detects operation and its parameters, input and output parameters. So it actually creates this internet exposed invoking operations with the help of WSDL or WADL. And what you have to do, you have to do some JavaScript kind of thing. You write client stuff that these are the input parameter that client want to know, and you ask for the from the client that these are the parameters text box. You have to fill them, and when you send click send button, you'll send these parameter to the internet web service, and web service will process these parameter and return you the output. So the client will automatically be able to see output on HTML page or a desktop based application. So in that desktop based application and HTML page, there is a code which is written that it is saying that these are the input parameter to the web service, and the parameter will go to the web service from client desktop to the server, and server will process these parameter, and parameter will be returned to the client. So this is all process is called remote procedure calling. So operations is like remote procedure calls. And these are the operations are the new and advanced form of remote procedure calls. Then generate RESTful Java client. So NetBeans also support how to generate and how to create RESTful Java client based upon some Java web application or some desktop application as well it supports. So you can create your RESTful or SOAP client for your web service. Then the one of the good way is to mash up of different web services. Means different web service can be mashed up with during the client. So client can call web service 1, client can call web service 2, and both the web service are being combined at the client level. So client will actually have a mashup of 2, 3, 4 web service usage. So 2, 3, 4 web service input are being input output, and these are being synchronized, and this is called a client based mashup for these applications and additional services that you want to use. These are being done with the help of web service descriptor files like WSDL and WADL. Again, there are good features of NetBeans like drag and drop. So drag and drop type of service which was available in Pojo servlet, JSP, JSF, PHP page, and various other IDE that can generate automated code for accessing the web service. So it generates the accessible code for the web service that you just drag and drop operations, and you'll have automated generated SOAP request or RESTful request, and that SOAP and RESTful request will go to the server, and it will give you the server will give you the output, means response, and return the response, and the response will come to the client, and client will automatically again as by reading the output parameters, it will generate the output for the client. Then the web service, NetBeans web service client further have three different features like access web services. So in the access web services, it's like a popular web services, RESTful web service or SOAP based web services that you know of Google, Facebook, Yahoo. These are having their APIs. Amazon, Flickr, Twitter, and many more have their own RESTful APIs. These are being exposed and being available for the users to be used and being exploited for their client purpose. So if you are developer, you want to develop and use some Google, Facebook APIs, so you can use their APIs along with the NetBeans web service client so that you can have a better feature of Google Translate, Google Image Search, or Google Maps. And you have a web service manager for doing all these things. And then NetBeans web service client also follows web service interoperability technologies. Even this was being followed by during web service development part. What is this interoperability technologies? So suppose there are multiple development of web service at a multiple location, and multiple developers are coding different web services. So you need to have some standard way for developing these type of services. What are the standard way of developing these type of service? So you need to have a standard interoperability way for development of these services. So there is some standard which has been given by other communities, many communities working together, which is named as Web Service Interoperability Technology. So this is the standard which has been followed by NetBeans. Then it also supports web service of mobiles, Android app or iOS app. So these apps are been working with along with the web service that you develop in the NetBeans, and client could able to facilitate and use all these things, and you need not to worry much about how these services and other parts are interacting with each other. Next IDE is Eclipse Web Service tools. And Eclipse Web Service tools are basically part of Eclipse Web Tool projects. So Eclipse Web Tools project is a large Eclipse IDE project. In as a sub project, this Eclipse Web Service tool is another sub project of large web tool projects. What kind of standard does it support? What kind of feature in this project of Eclipse ID? So Eclipse is looking at the two part of the web service development tool. What is first part? First part is J2EE, means Java Enterprise Edition Standard Tools, JST, and for this is the first component that they are looking for the development of Java based web service, Java for developing, interacting and with web services. Then extensible JS wizards. So it also provides development environment for web service as well as for the client, so that the client can start using the web service for available on internet or some local host. So you can have both web service development environment as well as client development environment in the Eclipse web service tools. So Eclipse has a aunt which actually built and deploys various projects. Now Eclipse web service tools also contains web service aunt that actually creates and consumes the web services, means build, deploy, and client can able to use this kind of web service. So all the create, build and deployment is being analyzed and processed by the aunt. Next, the server which is supported by Eclipse web service tools. So its access, Apache access was being supported by Eclipse, and in NetBeans, Apache Tomcat and Glassfish servers are being supported. NetBeans supports Glassfish and Tomcat, Apache Tomcat server, whereas Eclipse supports Apache Access server. So the second part of the web service tool project of Eclipse contains of WST web service component, which is independent of Java specific tools, other platforms, other languages other than Java being considered in this component of this project of Eclipse. So Eclipse has two parts in this web service tools project. So this was the second part of the this project by Eclipse, which doesn't considers only Java and other things, like it considers HTML, it considers WSDL development environment. So what it does help in developing web service pages, how this web service could look like on. Then we'll see a testing framework, Apache JMeter testing framework. It's one of the very famous testing framework available in Java platform. It's developed in Java. It is useful for the load testing. Basically, it was initially generated for the load testing and it was completely written on Java. Then it also measures some of the well-known metrics for measuring the web applications, and it tests various dynamic and static pages and all the dynamic things that you can do with the HTML. So it basically helpful for the simulation of heavy testing of heavy load, means simulating that there are hundreds of users is using this feature of a web service or a web application. Then how the server respond. So the group of server could be tested, network could be tested, and various objects of the server could be tested. Then the analysis of the performance, means how the server behaves on the load. And this has been done with the ability of reading and parsing the HTML, JSON, and XML, other textual format. So the JMeter could able to parse and analyze HTML, JSON, XML type of things. These are the features provided by the JMeter. What are the features provided by the JMeter? So load testing and performance testing are the main important aspect of JMeter for applications deployed at web and server, and there are various web protocols. So what are the web protocols that it tests? HTTP and HTTPS, which was being supported by Java, Node.js, PHP, ASP.NET. Then all these type of web type of testing being done by the JMeter. Then most dedicatedly and important for us is SOAP and RESTful Waves web service. Then FTP file transfer protocol testing, database like JDBC testing, LDAP testing, message oriented middlewares like via JMS, and mailing testing, SMTP, POP3, IMAP, then native command or shell script type of testing being supported by the JMeter, then TCP testing and various Java object testing being supported by the JMeter. Out of that, these are the features which were important for us for testing purpose. So these are the features like static and dynamic web application testing for analysis of load and functional behavior, and various performance metrics analysis could be done. So these are the features which were helpful for testing us web services. So web services are because aligned with all these type of things as well, like HTTP and HTTPS web protocols with Java, Node.js, PHP or ASP.NET. So these are the features which are additionally required for testing a web service and SOAP testing and RESTful web service testing. And dedicatedly, JMeter also provided feature for testing SOAP and RESTful web service with the inbuilt feature that we'll see in next. So this is the JMeter web service test plan. How you can insert a SOAP-based testing for SOAP request, and then it will go to the server web service, and web service will operation will process it and return you the SOAP response. So you mention the URL for the that web service that you want to test, and the JMeter will parse that and read the WSDL and that web service and generate SOAP request. Then SOAP request being template was being generated. Then in that template means body data, you mention the input parameters. Like here zip code you had mentioned. So zip code will go and it will give us information about that city, that how the information given by that web service. Then it's also possible for testing a RESTful uh, web services. You just need to change the method from post to get, and all these method should be changed. And when you change that method, then you can able to do RESTful web service testing. So body data could be of JSON, XML, and various custom data according to the depending on the URL that you had mentioned. So JMeter do parsing of that URL, whatever content had been given in the URL, and it will generate automatically body data. In that body data, you mention the parameters, input parameters, and automatically being when you test, the request will go and the output will come, and in this output you will have the information about the return response by the web service. We'll see next testing framework, which is SoapUI, and it is also one of the famous web service testing frameworks. So it's open source. Actually, Eclipse, NetBeans, and JMeter and SoapUI, all four are the open source and having a huge community developing behind them, and means anyone could download the repository and start developing all these four tools that we had seen: Eclipse, NetBeans, and JMeter and SoapUI. So we'll come to the SoapUI. SoapUI basically helps to do management, creation, and execution of a RESTful SOAP-based web service, and it also additionally supports GraphQL API for the testing purpose. JMS, it performs testing for messages, and JDBC for database testing, and other web service parts could be easily tested with the help of SoapUI testing framework. Then what it is helpful for? It is helpful for the developer and tester for specifically for the RESTful and SoapUI SOAP based APIs. So the SOAP UI is the simplest and easiest form of testing API and various other things. What type of feature that it validates? It validates REST, SOAP, GraphQL, microservices, other backend services. Then the SoapUI also do scriptless functional testing. Scripting functional testing is a popular one, means you write a script and then you, uh, in this case, script you mention the input, then the input will go to the, with the socket programming, it will go to the server, and server will respond to the client that is script, and script will validate again whether that code is generating right result or not. If the result was same as expected, then the script says that the test case is passed. Here in SoapUI do scriptless testing as well because it's convenient and user friendly. So it's can create automatically and run the complex scenario for testing purpose. Then security testing. Security testing means scanning and analysis of the services. So this could be done with the security testing. Some of the common vulnerable threats available on internet could be analyzed and measured by the security testing feature of the SOAP UI. So this is how the SOAP UI and JMeter being used by the cloud auditor, which is one of the actor of the cloud hierarchy and the cloud model that we had seen. So the cloud auditor do all these type of things: scriptless testing, script testing, security testing, load testing. In the load testing, it do some existing API was there and it will do too much testing, means 1,000 clients are calling a web service, even 10,000 clients are calling. So it do all these type of thing for the load testing. So API helps to do create 1,000 requests, and 1,000 requests are going simultaneously. So how the server will start behaving and working. Then SoapUI also do API mocking, means it is mimicking something that these are the web service. It also helps you to mimic the request, that these are the requests and how the web service behaves and responds. Again, the protocol testing, like it supports, SoapUI supports simple object access protocol, SOAP, and web service descriptive language testing. WSDL was the interface for SOAP protocol. Then it has for representational state transfer, means REST testing. Then JMS, Java message service testing. Then it also support the four different type of things, like security, load, mocking, and functional testing. So these four type of important testing: functional, security, load, and mocking, along with these three protocols, behaves very good for us to do web service testing. Then there's lots of developers developing all these four things: NetBeans, Eclipse, JMeter, and SoapUI. So you can download their repository and start developing. So this is what it means by vibrant open source community for the ecosystem. So you can start developing for them. And when you develop, you push the repository. If you have something good developed, then they will say commit for the advanced feature of that tool. So this is how the open source community works, and all four are open source platforms. This is how the SoapUI testing framework works. This is for the SOAP-based testing. So how the SOAP-based testing works? It You simply go to the file menu, select new project, and you import the WSDL. How you import? You import it from the local desktop. So if you don't have the WSDL available on your local desktop, then you just copy paste the URL. So in the copy pasting URL, thereafter you'll have the three options: create request, create test suite, relative path. So you create all these features, whatever feature that is required for you, and what SoapUI do for you? SoapUI will extract and parse the WSDL, and that would be helpful for the analysis of the SOAP request and response. Next, how the SOAP request will come up in the project, testing project. A test suite will be created. So calculator SOAP is a kind of test suite, and in this test suite, add is an operation, and add will have a request, which is request one. In this request one, you need to mention the input parameter, which is a and b. So you mention input parameter a and b. When you mention input parameter a and b in the SOAP request, the request will go to the server of calculator web service, and then the calculator will web service will do addition operation, and it will give you the return. How it will do? So this is like when you click on the play button, means green at the left hand top side. So you have a request of 1 and 2, means integer a as 1, integer b as 2, and when you click play, then the 1 and 2 will go to the web service, which is mentioned in the URL that you had given, and the web service will execute 1 plus 2, and it will give response as 3. So the response will come to you as 3 in the SOAP res response message. Then if you are not feeling comfortable with the XML, you want only the user-friendly environment that you mention in the text box, then the the form view is available. Then you just need to mention text box, in the text box, the input parameter int a, int b. Then the response will come up, and it will be independent of visualizing in the XML. So XML as well as form view are the two features provided by the SoapUI testing framework. Then next is SoapUI with RESTful testing. Again, this is very simple. You go to the file, select a new test REST project for testing, paste the URL and click OK. And then you have the 4 type of feature that you want to do testing: get, post, put, and delete. Get is for reading and retrieving the data. Post is for adding new data. Then put is for updating the existing data, and delete is for removing the data. So get and delete is the simple. Get means retrieve the data. Delete means remove the data. Post is again simple, means adding the data, but put is like updating the data. So you need to do extra coding effort for the put. Next, how this testing of RESTful works. So when you do testing, so you'll have a test suite, test case, and for the request response of test step. So what it does like give you 3 options again: a request window, test case editor, showcase request editor. So you can generate automatically the test suite, you can generate automatically the test cases, and you will have the test steps in those test cases. So in the testing project, you have multiple test suites. In the multiple test suite, in each of the test suite, you'll have multiple test cases. And in each of the test cases, you can have multiple test steps. Test steps contains SOAP request and SOAP response, or RESTful request and RESTful response. So this is the hierarchy which has been given. The test suite 1 contains the test case 1. The test case 1 is having the test step 1. And this is the hierarchy which is being followed by the SoapUI framework. So basically the test suite is the topmost position in a testing framework and testing project. So the test cases were there, and multiple test cases were there, and each of the test case have the multiple test steps. So this is the hierarchy followed by the SoapUI, and you need to create multiple test cases, and test step was being extracted and being generated by the SoapUI framework, and you need to create a SOAP or RESTful request for this test step. We will wind up our lecture over here. In the next lecture, we'll see web service slicing for regression testing of services. with the help of intra and inter operational analysis. In intra operational analysis means one operation is being analyzed within itself, and interoperation means multiple operation is being analyzed with other procedure and methods, as well as with other operations, mean 2 3 4 operations are being interacting, means interoperational analysis. And thanks for today, and we'll see each other in the next class. Okay, bye, see you guys.